So this is formally our third lecture for the theory part of this course. Although we have had other interaction before these lectures, especially in the context of computer programming lab, the lab part of this course. All of you can hear me? ठीक है. If you remain quiet, you'll be very comfortable in hearing me. Okay, so this is the outline for today's lecture. Again, some of these things we have already covered in our previous interactions. Some of these things we'll keep on repeating for a couple of lectures so that like you internalize those concepts. Again, this course is about computer programming, so you should have this picture in your mind that this is what a computer is. This is how a computer looks like. So this is how it looks like from a structural point of view. These are its essential components. Every computer has a CPU or a microprocessor, the device that you program, the device that this course is all about. So we basically, in this course, we learn one language in which we can perform or in which we can write instructions for this particular component, the microprocessor. Okay? You should know about the examples of it. For example, this laptop has a Core i5. Core i5 is a microprocessor. You might have a Core i3 or a Core i7 or a Core i9, and there are other microprocessors. Uh, Almost everywhere in your smartphones, you have microprocessors. In your like everywhere where there is a computer, the computer has a small CPU or microprocessor in it. Okay. So a computer also has memory, and we talked about the types of memory, primary memory and secondary memory. Primary memory is the memory that is directly accessible to the CPU. All your programs, all your data that you need to process, the programs that need to be executed, the data that needs to be processed must be in the primary memory. Okay. Then we have input and output. So we need to interact with the outside world. The input, we can have multiple types of input, and then we can also have multiple types of output. This view should stick with you. You'll revisit this view of the computer when you get to your fourth or fifth semester. So there you'll study a course on embedded systems. And there you learn about computers that can be embedded into other devices. For example, a device like an air conditioner or a device like a microwave oven or a car or some other device. Wherever you want to have some degree of intelligence or automation, so you can use a small computer that can be embedded into another device. Okay, so that is called an embedded computer. It comes every all parts of that computer, they come on a single chip, on a single IC. So the RAM, the ROM, the CPU, the IO interfaces, they all come in one package. Okay, here we have different things. The CPU is separate. We buy or purchase a motherboard for the CPU, so the CPU is installed in the motherboard. The motherboard provides all the interfaces to the other hardware devices. We have the keyboard and the mouse pad, and all these keyboard and mouse pads, they have specific like controllers which basically streamline the interface of the computer, the CPU, with these devices. So this is slightly more complicated, and here we have like a standalone CPU, a standalone memory device, standalone output devices. In embedded computers, you have all of those things in a single package. Okay, so it's just one IC, and that IC has all these components put together. This should stay with you. And again, what is the role of these components? We get raw data from the input. The processor processes that raw data using the program that you wrote, and that program resides in the memory. And on the output, you get some sort of information. Okay, so here we use the chart to show the information, but it may not always be the information may not always be in that particular form. It may be in the form of a decision whether to turn on the compressor of an air conditioner or turn it off. ठीक है, तो ये जो information आपको मिलती है, this can be anything. Okay, so we have gone through this multiple times, and we have like why do we want to go it over and over again is because I want view of a computer to stick with you, and I want you to internalize these concepts. Now, in our last lecture, we wrote a program. We have been writing programs, I guess, in the lab sessions as well. So this may be familiar to you. Okay. So computers are for data processing, and in order to process data, you need to get data, and then when you process it, you need to display the results of those processing. So input and output, they are essential. Now in this particular course, we'll be creating only console applications. Console applications, by console application we mean that we'll be interacting with the user through the command line interface. Okay, so this is the command line interface. If you go to the start menu and you type CMD, okay, CMD. So CMD, it will bring up command prompt. Okay, so this is your command prompt. Now, the earliest version of Windows, it was not basically the earliest version of Windows, it was the first operating system that Microsoft made. It was DOS, disk operating system. So DOS came on a single diskette, a floppy diskette, okay? And DOS had this interface. In fact, before DOS, like Unix was created, Unix was, say, perhaps the first mainstream operating system. So it had a command line interface. And even today, Linux servers, okay, or Unix servers. So servers, they don't need to show anything on. They don't need fancy displays or fancy user interfaces. All they need is to serve the client computers. So usually servers, for performance reasons, they have this command line interface. Okay, command line interface to have, it is more efficient. Graphical user interface, the one that you see here, this is less efficient. It takes a lot of computing power to draw all these components. So graphical user interface takes a lot of computing power. Command line interface is much simpler. Okay? It may not be that useful. May not. It's definitely not very fancy. People don't like it. But at this level, if I have to teach you GUI level programming in C++, that will be very tough. Okay. So you need at least a couple of courses before you can start doing that in C++. So this is a very fundamental course. So here we are only going to interact with the user through this screen. This is the, you can call it the command prompt, you can call it the console. Okay, so this would be our interface. This is the command line interface. Why is it called a command line interface? Because you enter command and then something happens. For example, there is a very famous DOS command, dir, directory. So if you want to know about all the folders and files in the current directory, you type this command dir and press enter and you get the list of all that. Okay? We are not going to do DOS here, but the point that I wanted to make was CLS clear screen. So the screen is clear. The point is that we will be writing programs that will be interacting with the user through this interface. Now you need to know how should I read data from this interface and how can I output information on this interface. So in one of the lab sessions we have done that. We use this particular library. We need to import the IOStream header file. We need to use the IOStream library. And then we know that if you want to print something onto the console screen, so we say console out or C out. And then we use the stream insertion operator. And then whatever we want to put on the console screen, we just type it in there. Okay? It's not that simple. Like we talked about string literals and numeric literals and variables in our last lecture. So you have to be careful about that as well. Like if you just randomly type anything, that is not going to be printed. If you want to read something, some information, you can use cin, okay, console in. So console in and then the stream extraction operator. This is called the stream extraction operator. Okay. So you can use it to read something from it. In this particular case, we are reading strings. We are reading strings. What is a string? A string is an array of characters. Okay? So this is one character. Okay? This is one character. Character. Acha. In programming, like it is important that you know the jargon, the technical terms. Word means something different. Okay? So we cannot use word here. word size, that is something to do with the architecture of your CPU. Say for example, the Core i5 has a word size of 64 bits. That means it can process in one instruction, or in one go it can process 64 bits of data. 64 bit huge numbers. If you want to process bigger numbers, you need to it takes more time than relatively. Acha, let us write this program. Okay, so I'll create the console application. I guess we have gone through the interface in our last lecture as well. Like, this is the interface. You should know what the file menu is about. Okay, you should roam around this interface, this IDE, so that you're used to it. You should know what the edit menu is about. If there is something wrong with your view, you should know where to go, how to consult the view menu. So let us create a project. We can create a project by clicking here on the start page, or by going to the file menu and then clicking new and selecting a project. You can do it either way. So every time you program, you are going to create a project, a console application. Okay? Acha. This is the only application that we'll be creating in this course, console application. So console application interacts with the console or the command prompt. So this wizard will start. We are using the C++ language, and we need to save this file. Do not save your code on the desktop. Okay? Make a specific directory and then save your code there. Okay, so I have sources here, and we have done test strings. Okay, in any case, uh, this is, say, let me call it 18 June, and input and output. Okay. Now project name should be meaningful. Since I am teaching, so I have to do it differently. But if you're working on a practical or professional project, then its name should be meaningful name. Or you can, like, sometimes names are subject to copyrights. Like, you cannot create a project by the name of Word and then ship it. Okay, so Word is copyrighted by Microsoft. Similarly, say Visual Studio, you cannot create any project or application by the name of Visual Studio and then start selling it. You cannot do that. Okay, so names are copyrighted. So it is important, like, whenever you are naming something, the name should be original, and the name should have some purpose, like it should be related to the type of project that you are creating. Okay, so just leave these settings as they are, and then you're good to go. Okay. Okay, so before we created this project, this place, the project manager, it was empty. There was nothing in here. Now that we have created our project, we have that project here, and this project has a directory underneath, which is named as sources. Sources means your source code. Okay. So the main.c++ file is created by default for you. Okay, so all your source code, it is going to be stored in files with the extension .c++. Okay? These are text files. We talked about that. Okay? We opened the source file in our last lecture. We also opened a Word document. So we said we differentiated between the concept of a text file and a data file. So Microsoft Word document is a data file. Okay? It does not only store the text that you type in. It stores plenty of other information as well, the formatting information and other things. Whereas the source code that you create, that is plain ASCII text file. Okay, so it is just text. When you open it in Notepad, you'll have the same text that you typed in. And we said that this coloring, this is added by, this is the work of your editor. Okay, so the editor basically highlights different parts of your code through different colors, so that you know, like, which part is which. For example, keywords are reserved words, words that are reserved for specific use in a programming language. Okay, so they have a specific purpose in a programming language. You cannot use keywords as identifiers. You cannot use those keywords to name anything. Okay? Their purpose is reserved. Whenever you use a keyword, your compiler would immediately know like what do you want to do. For example, if you use the keyword return, so your compiler would expect some value after return because your compiler then knows that you're trying to return some value. You're trying to exit some function and return some value. Okay? If you use the keyword int, then your compiler would start guessing that most probably you're either declaring a function or you're declaring a variable. Okay, so you're doing either of these things. So it would expect a valid identifier after int. Okay, so that is how the compiler basically like it checks the grammar. So it looks at all. It takes your source code, it tokenizes it, it divides it into tokens or single words, and then it checks like the grammar what is expected of, after which kind of word, so it knows that, and if you have followed it, then it would not flag any error. If you have not, if you have violated any of those rules, then it will start flagging errors. This is the code that you get. Now we want to read strings. Okay? We want to read strings. C++ does not have a built-in type for handling strings. Okay? Other languages do have, but C++ and C++ like it is successor of C. It is an advanced version of C, and it inherits many of the properties of C. So C also did not have any data type for storing strings. We have one data type that is called character, but it can store a single character. So the character variable character A, say, it can store only a single variable. Sorry, okay? It can only store a single character, sorry, a single ASCII character. It cannot store more than one ASCII character. So if I say XAB, say for example, if I do something like that, so the compiler would flag an error. If you compile this file, I didn't. Achha. It should have, but it didn't. Okay, hello world, and let us print the character A. Cout character A is equal to A. Okay. So I hope I don't have to explain this. A is a variable, that's why it is not in double quotes. I can use directly A. Okay. I have defined A as a character variable. So we are fine here. This is a string. I want this thing to be printed as it is. So I have to make it a string literal. I have to make it a string literal. Okay. So I have to enclose it in double quotes. When we enclose something in double quotes, then it becomes a string literal. Okay. Character literals, we usually enclose character literals or specify character literals through single quote. Okay. Now C++ or the compiler for C and C++, they are strict in some senses and they are loose in some senses. So sometimes they may not flag an error, an obvious error. For example, here you're trying to this is assignment. This is assignment. What is assignment? We are assigning a new value. We are assigning a value to a variable. In fact, this statement is called initialization. This statement is called initialization. If you have such a statement, for example, if you say character B, this statement is called declaration. Here we are just declaring what B is. B is a character. We are not assigning it an initial value. Here we are doing this both things. We are declaring A as a character variable and we are assigning it some value. So this is called initialization and this is just plain simple declaration. Okay? Acha. So if you print A, what would be printed? X, A or B. Okay? Since it's just a character variable, it can only store one character. So it will print only one character. And most probably it would be the first character, X. The remaining data you'll lose. The compiler flags a warning. Character A is equal to B. It printed the last character. Okay? अच्छा, अब इसको कहते हैं, दिस इज समथिंग दैट इज नॉन स्टैंडर्ड बिहेवियर। नॉन स्टैंडर्ड बिहेवियर से मुराद के the C++ language says कि a is a character variable, you should assign it only a single character value। ठीक है, आपने उसको एक कैरेक्टर वैल्यू के बजाय तीन कैरेक्टर वैल्यूज असाइन की। यू असाइंड इट अ स्ट्रिंग, दिस इज अ स्ट्रिंग, मोर देन वन कैरेक्टर technically makes a string. Now this, what would be the output in this case? This would vary from compiler to compiler. यहाँ आप run करेंगे, maybe you'll get B. If you use Microsoft's compiler, maybe you get an X. और मे बी माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का कंपाइलर आपको ये कंपाइल करने ही ना दे। ठीक है, सो इस किस्म का जो बिहेवियर है ये फिर दिस गोज आउट ऑफ द स्कोप ऑफ द सी प्लस प्लस स्टैंडर्ड। ठीक है, वी हैव टॉक्ड अबाउट के इन आवर लास्ट लेक्चर के सी प्लस प्लस लैंग्वेज इज अ स्टैंडर्ड एज वेल, इट इज एन आईएसओ स्टैंडर्ड, सो इट हैज बीन स्टैंडर्डाइज्ड। तो स्टैंडर्डाइज जो है, जब आप किसी चीज़ को करते हैं, सो यू स्पेसिफाई द बेयर मिनिमम लेवल दैट एवरी कंपाइलर मस्ट मीट। ठीक है, so there are things that go beyond the standard, जिसको स्टैंडर्ड कवर नहीं करता है, तो वहाँ पे फिर योर बिहेवियर, कोड का जो बिहेवियर है, इट कैन बी एनीथिंग एंड इट कैन बी डिफरेंट ऑन वन कंप्यूटर एंड ऑन अनदर कंप्यूटर। मे बी अगर इसी कोड को इफ वी रन इट ऑन अनदर ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम, द बिहेवियर माइट बी डिफरेंट। ठीक है, so here you need to be careful. If you want character A to store X, so you should precisely allocate it the character value X. ठीक है, and then you build and run. So now you'll get the correct value. Character A is equal to X. Asha. So we were saying that C++ does not have a built-in type for strings. So if you want to use strings, and you would definitely want to use strings in different situations, then you need to import or include a library in your code. That library is, you need to include a header file, and that header file is the string header file. Okay. So you need to include this header file string, hash include string. Only then can you use strings then. Why do you need to use string? For example, if you need to ask the user input your first name or last name or वगैरह वगैरह. So if you need to do something like that, then you need to be able to handle strings. And in order to handle strings, you have to import a library. C++ does not have a built-in type for strings. Built-in types के लिए आपको libraries की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ती. If you need to declare an int or double character, bool, so you can do all of this in your main program without importing any library. ठीक है? But if you want to handle strings, you need to import some library. ठीक है, we have imported the string library. Now we want to declare variables of type string. कैसे करें? So that you can do by writing say string. So string is a data type. अब इसका color change है. It is not blue, it is green. ठीक है? So it is a, यूं समझ लें कि it is a user defined type. ठीक है? It is not a built-in type. String is not a keyword. String is an identifier that is not part of the C++ language. It is part of the standard libraries that come with the C++ language, but string is not a keyword. ठीक है, इसका color आपको जो change नजर आ रहा है ना, it is not a keyword, it is not a built-in type. So this should also give you a hint कि ये string तो मुख्तलिफ चीज़ है, it is not a built-in type. If you use any other built-in type, say int, x, ठीक है, double, y, float, z, bool, say j, ठीक है, so all these are built-in types and you create variables of these built-in types using keywords, the C++ जो keywords जो provide किए language में. So strings are an extension to the C++ language, you can say. So now they are shipped as a standard library. ठीक है, ये as a library इनको ship किया जाता है. Now if you need to declare a string variable just like any other variable, किसी और वेरिएबल को, हाउ डू यू डिक्लेयर अ वेरिएबल? यू फर्स्ट स्पेसिफाई द टाइप एंड देन you specify the identifier. ठीक है, type identifier. So here again you specify the type, you say I want to declare a variable of type string, and then you specify the identifier. So say we want to have a variable that can store first name. ठीक है, so string first name. Then we want another variable to store the last name. ठीक है, string last name, we have two variables, first name last name, so we'll be doing something on these variables. अच्छा जी, now we need to ask the user to enter his or her first name and then his or her last name. We want the user to do that. ठीक है, तो वो हम कैसे करेंगे? So we first need to prompt the user. ठीक है, we need to print a message to the user like what the user has to do, what the user is supposed to do. ठीक है, you are going to use a command line interface. काली screen है, उस पे cursor blink कर रहा है. So the user doesn't know कि मैंने करना क्या है. So you have to give instructions to the user. That is part of your command line interface. ठीक है. So you'll instruct the user क्या करना है, उसके बाद क्या करना है, उसके बाद क्या करना है. ठीक है. So we want the user to enter his or her first name. So please enter your first name. ठीक है. Brackets में लिख लेते हैं followed by, yeah, please type in your first name, then press enter key. ठीक है. अच्छा, so here again a revision, we'll use the escape sequence to insert a new line character. ठीक है. अच्छा, this will print this message कि please type in your first name then press the enter key. The user cannot type the first name until you write code for that. The code for that is you ask the console screen, like console, the input stream object, that you want to read some data from the console screen. How do you do that? So you use console in or cin for that, and then the stream extraction operator. ठीक है. Now मैंने आपसे शुरू में भी कहा था कि बाज़ लोग initially people get mistaken कि अगर हमने चीज़ print करनी है तो कौन से एंगुलर ब्रैकेट्स यूज़ करने हैं, और अगर हमने रीड करनी है तो कौन से एंगुलर ब्रैकेट्स यूज़ करने हैं. ठीक है. सो ऑलवेज रिमेंबर द एंगुलर ब्रैकेट्स, दे शो द फ्लो ऑफ डेटा. ठीक है. यहाँ पे ये जो टेक्स्ट है, इट इज़ गोइंग टू द कंसोल स्क्रीन. ठीक है, तो ये एरोज उस फ्लो ऑफ डेटा को शो कर रहे हैं, और यहाँ पे कंसोल स्क्रीन से डेटा आएगा तो कहाँ जाएगा? सो हम उसको एफ नेम वेरिएबल में स्टोर करना चाहते हैं. ठीक है. सो दिस वुड हेल्प यू रिमेंबर के कौन सा ऑपरेटर कब यूज करना. ठीक है. अच्छा, ये हो गया. देन वी वांट टू रीड द लास्ट नेम एज वेल. ठीक है. कंट्रोल प्लस सी एंड देन कंट्रोल प्लस वी. अच्छा, प्लीज टाइप इन योर लास्ट नेम. ठीक है. देन प्रेस द एंटर की एंड देन वी वांट the last name to be read into the variable last name. ठीक है. अच्छा, we have written this code. आप इसकी फंक्शनैलिटी चेक कर सकते हैं. Let us print whatever we read. अच्छा, welcome first name. ठीक है. अच्छा, हम उसको वेलकम कर रहे हैं. So that will basically show like tell you कि the name that the user typed in, it has been stored in the variable f name, and now we are printing it. ठीक है. अच्छा, let us compile the code, see if we have made any errors. अच्छा, there is nothing. You should always look at the log. ठीक है. यहाँ पे ये वेरिएबल, ये जो वार्निंग्स है ना, उनको भी पढ़ लिया करें. अनयूज्ड वेरिएबल x, अनयूज्ड वेरिएबल y. सो यू हैव डिक्लेयर दीज वेरिएबल्स एंड यू हैव नॉट यूज्ड दीज वेरिएबल्स. सो दिस इज अ वार्निंग कि आप वेरिएबल्स डिक्लेयर किए और यूज नहीं कर रहे. ठीक है. मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स यू कैन इग्नोर द वार्निंग्स, बट यू शुड ऑलवेज लुक एट द वार्निंग्स. नाउ बिल्ड एंड रन. अच्छा जी, सो वी हैव आवर प्रॉम्प्ट मैसेज, प्लीज टाइप इन योर फर्स्ट नेम. ठीक है. And say this is my first name, please type in your last name. and welcome Shiraz in this. ठीक है, so we are reading it properly. अच्छा, so if you need to read strings, use strings, so you need to import the string library. If you need to declare, definitely if you have imported the library and you want to store string, you need to have variables of type string. This is how you can declare variables of type string. And you can read data into any type of variable using cin, and you can print any type of variable on the console screen using cout. Okay, so this is how you do it. अच्छा, अब इसके साथ थोड़ा सा ये लास्ट नेम को भी हम यूज करेंगे. विल डू समथिंग a little more interesting with it. अच्छा, let's see कि यहाँ पे what do we have on the slides. Okay, so this is how you do input and output, and here we did the input and output of strings. Okay, so we included the string header file. Now you can what, like, we can summarize. We have talked about it, whatever we did in this thing, but you can further summarize it. Here we read into the variable first name. We named our variable as f name. ठीक है, so this is the variable. यहाँ पे variable को बाद में declare किया गया है. ठीक है, ideally, like I prefer कि जो भी variables हम use कर रहे हैं, we should declare those variables at the top, at the very beginning of your program. ठीक है, but जो आपसे requirement है compiler की, वो ये है कि before you use the variable you must declare it. Okay, so here this variable first name is being used. It is being used to read string into. ठीक है, so before you do that you need to declare it. You need to declare it. So यहाँ उसकी declaration है. Now you cannot do something like this कि आप कहें कि cin first name और उसके बाद कहें string first name. ठीक है, the declaration cannot follow the use. The use must follow the declaration. The declaration must precede the use of a variable. किसी वेरिएबल को इस्तेमाल करने से पहले आपने उसको डिक्लेयर करना है, उसके बाद डिक्लेयर करने का कोई फ़ायदा नहीं. अगर आप ऐसा काम करेंगे तो आपका कंपाइलर जो है इट विल फ्लैग एन एरर. फॉर एग्जांपल, लेट मी कमेंट आउट दिस declaration. ठीक है, सो हियर वी आर रीडिंग फर्स्ट नेम एंड देन यहाँ पे हम डिक्लेरेशन करते हैं कि जी स्ट्रिंग एफ नेम की. एफ नेम जो है वो एक स्ट्रिंग है. सो पहले हम एफ नेम को यूज कर रहे हैं, फर्स्ट नेम को, फिर हम उसको डिक्लेयर कर रहे हैं. दिस इज रॉन्ग. आपका कंपाइलर जो है वो फ्लैग कर देगा यहाँ पे एरर कि एफ नेम इज नॉट डिक्लेयर्ड इन दिस स्कोप. ठीक है, वाज नॉट डिक्लेयर्ड इन दिस स्कोप, सो इट डज नॉट नो व्हाट एफ नेम इज. सो दिस इज यूजलेस. द डिक्लेरेशन मस्ट प्रीसीड द यूज ऑफ अ वेरिएबल. ठीक है, अच्छा, अच्छा, यहाँ पे क्या नोट करने वाली चीज़ें हैं. अगेन ये हम पहले भी डिस्कस कर चुके हैं, लेकिन से फॉर द सेक ऑफ कंप्लीशन, in this particular statement we are like sending more than one value to the console screen. हम ये टेक्स्ट हेलो और फर्स्ट नेम और ये न्यू लाइन कैरेक्टर, ये तीनों भिजवा रहे हैं. ठीक है, सो यू नो दैट हमने मेरे ख्याल में एक लैब सेशन में इसकी वो रखी थी कि you can use the stream insertion operator multiple times in a single statement, और जितनी भी चीज़ें आप कंसोल स्क्रीन पे आउटपुट करना चाहते हैं you can do that. ठीक है, a statement that introduces a variable is a declaration. We have talked about that. ठीक है, so here we have this declaration. हमारे प्रोग्राम में we have multiple declarations. ठीक है, अच्छा, ये रिटर्न स्टेटमेंट जो है वो इस कोड में नहीं दी गई. ठीक है, सो रिटर्न इज ऑप्शनल. वी हैव डेमोन्स्ट्रेटेड दैट इन आवर लास्ट लेक्चर. इफ यू रिमूव रिटर्न स्टिल योर कोड वर्क्स फाइन. ठीक है, बट इट्स ऑलवेज अ गुड आइडिया टू हैव द रिटर्न स्टेटमेंट देयर. ठीक है, and every variable holds a value for specific type. Strings को हमने store करना था तो we needed a variable of type string. If you want to store integer, you need to have a variable of type integer. If you want to store floating point values, real values, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you need to have variables of float and double. This is important. ठीक है, because internally your microprocessor, it represents these data differently, it stores these data differently, represent, in fact there is a separate hardware circuit that adds integers and that adds floating point numbers. ठीक है, real numbers को की addition, subtraction, division, multiplication separate तरीके से होती है, separate hardware करता है, और integers की जो arithmetic operations हैं, that is done separately and it is done by a separate hardware. ठीक है. So that is why we have these different types of data, and we need to explicitly, in many languages we are required to explicitly mention कि किस type of data को हम इस variable में store करना चाह रहे हैं. ठीक है, because that makes a lot of things easier for the compiler. अच्छा, we have talked about it. इस program में we are reading into a variable. Every variable has a type. This variable had string type जिसमें हम data को read करना चाह रहे थे. The type of variable determines what operations can be performed on it. ठीक है, किसी भी variable की type determine करती है what kind of operations can be performed on it. इसको हम demonstrate भी करेंगे. For example, C++ में if you need to add two numbers, you use the addition operator. ठीक है. Now the meaning of the addition operator. अच्छा, one last comment about Cin. And you should know how Cin works here. When you say Cin first name, तो वो क्या Cin की कंसोल स्क्रीन से फिर डेटा किस तरह रीड होता है कि कंसोल स्क्रीन पे जब यूज़र टाइप करना शुरू कर देता है अपना नाम, ठीक है, तो फर्स्ट नेम में या ये स्ट्रिंग तब तक रीड होता रहता है जब तक यूज़र वाइट स्पेस कैरेक्टर ना एंटर करे. ठीक है, वाइट स्पेस कैरेक्टर क्या है? इट इज़ द एंटर की, इट इज़ द स्पेस कैरेक्टर, इट इज़ द टैब की. इन तीनों में से कोई भी चीज़ एंटर कर ली ना तो उसके बाद वाली रीडिंग जो है वो नहीं होगी, उससे पहले जो भी एंटर किया हुआ बस वही रीड हो चुका होगा. ठीक है, सो विल ट्राई टू पुट दैट इन सम लैब सेशन ताकि आपको इसका क्लियर हो जाए. बट वेन एवर आई मैंशन द टर्म वाइट स्पेस मीन्स वो जो खाली जगह है आपके कोड में, एंड दैट खाली जगह इज क्रिएटेड यूजिंग द स्पेस कैरेक्टर, यूजिंग द न्यू लाइन कैरेक्टर. जब आप एंटर की प्रेस करते हैं तो नई लाइंस इंसर्ट होती जाती हैं, लॉट्स ऑफ वाइट स्पेस इज क्रिएटेड. और यूजिंग द टैब की, टैब जो है वो हॉरिजॉन्टली टेक्स्ट को मूव करता है इन अ लाइन. So all these characters, they are white space characters. Cin reads text until a white space character is entered. So white space character can be an enter key, a tab character or a space character. इन तीनों में से कोई भी हो सकता है. अच्छा, the type of variable determines ये कौन से operations हो सकते हैं. Strings cannot be added. ठीक है, integers can be added. Strings cannot be added. Strings को add नहीं कर सकते. Strings can be concatenated. Concatenated से मुराद आप एक string के साथ दूसरे को जोड़ सकते हैं. ठीक है, that is concatenation. For example, we can concatenate the first name and last name. दोनों को मिला के we can get the full name. ठीक है. So let us see that कि इससे क्या फर्क पड़ता है. For example, we have यहाँ पे we have two integers. Say we have, नीचे भी हमने integers declare किए हैं. Say we have these two integers int k and l. Now here I am declaring two variables on the same line. You can do that as well. ठीक है, एक ही line में you can declare multiple variables. So this is a declaration of multiple variables. Now we have these two integers k and l. What we'll do is we'll read values for k and l from the user and then we'll perform addition on those values. ठीक है, अच्छा. So cout, again we have done that. Please enter an integer value. And then we say, in fact let's say please enter two integer values. ठीक है, and then we say cin k l. Okay, so we are not only can you print multiple values in a single statement, you can also read multiple values in a single statement. So we are reading two values, two integer values. 3, 4, 5 जितने भी आप integer values read करना चाहते हैं, you can read in a single statement. So in this particular statement, at line number 11, we are reading in two integer values, k and l. ठीक है, अच्छा. Then we say the cout, the sum of, again we'll be printing multiple values here. The sum of, मैं चाहता हूं कि आउटपुट पे नजर आए k की वैल्यू प्रिंट हो कि k क्या है, एंड फिर l की वैल्यू प्रिंट हो कि l क्या है, फिर उनके सम की वैल्यू इज k प्लस l. ठीक है. So here we are printing multiple values. First this string literal, the sum of. उसके बाद हम चाहते हैं कि k ना लिखा हुआ नजर आए बल्कि k की वैल्यू लिखी हुई नजर आए. So that's why a stream insertion operator and then the variable k without any quotes or double quotes. ठीक है, उसके बगैर. So now this is the variable k. इसकी वैल्यू प्रिंट होगी. We have declared it. You have to make sure कि आप ऐसी चीज ना लिखें जो कि पहले से declared ना हो. So it has been declared and it has been initialized by the user. Then we want to print this message and उससे पहले भी space character उसके बाद भी space character, and then we want कि L की value print हो. So without any quotes or double quotes we simply write L ताकि L की value print हो instead of just the letter L, और फिर is और फिर उनका sum. ठीक है. अच्छा, ये हो गया. Now here you see we are using the addition operator. ठीक है. अब एडिशन किसकी हो रही है, यहां पे इंटीजर्स की हो रही है. नाउ यू शुड रिमेंबर टू थिंग्स अबाउट these operators. One, the first thing is कि the type of data determines what type of operations can be performed on that data. This is one. And two, the type of data can also determine the meaning of the operation. कि operation किस किस्म का होगा. यानी यहां पे ये दो इंटीजर्स हैं तो इंटीजर्स की एडिशन होगी, एरिथमेटिक एडिशन. यहां पे देखें, यानी यहां पे हम कहते हैं वेलकम. अच्छा, वेलकम एफ नेम प्लस अ स्पेस कैरेक्टर प्लस एल नेम. ठीक है. So what are we doing here? We ask the user to enter his or her first name, then his or her last name, and then we want to print a welcome message to the user by printing his or her full name. So how do you get the full name? You have to concatenate the first name and the last name. और बीच में उसको ज़रा readable बनाने के लिए भी we are inserting a space character. Now these are strings. ठीक है. But we are using the same operation, addition. तो क्या इनकी एडिशन होगी, यानी कैरेक्टर बाय कैरेक्टर एडिशन होगी? नहीं, ये कॉन्कैटिनेट होते हैं. तो टाइप ऑफ डेटा हैज चेंज्ड द मीनिंग ऑफ द ऑपरेटर एज वेल. Type of data has changed the meaning of the operator. This is called operator overloading. This is called operator overloading. Here this operator is overloaded. It can work on different data types. It can work on integers or numbers. It can also work on strings. ठीक है. When it is working on integers, it is doing arithmetic addition. When it is working with strings, it is doing concatenation. So the same operator is doing two different things depending upon the type of data that it has to operate with. Okay? Operate on. This is called operator overloading. This is called operator overloading. Overloading because you have changed the meaning or interpretation of the operator. ठीक है? उसको आपने थोड़ा सा change कर दिया. Asha, if you need to come for some reason, or if you are coming back, ठीक है, you don't need to ask for permission. Just go and come back. खामोशी से जाएं और खामोशी से आएं. Asha, let's run this program. और देखते हैं कि ये क्या करता है. So this message will be printed. This thing, this whole thing, this is an expression जिसमें हम तीन स्ट्रिंग्स को कॉन्कैटिनेट कर रहे हैं. तीन स्ट्रिंग्स को कॉन्कैटिनेट कर रहे हैं. फर्स्ट ये स्ट्रिंग वेरिएबल एफ नेम then this variable last name and then this space character, ठीक है, जिसको हमने string में किया हुआ है. So ये तीन strings को हम concatenate कर रहे हैं. Let's see how does it go. ठीक है, let's compile our code. So we don't have any errors, we just have warnings. Warnings वही again unused variables की. And let us build and run. Okay, so please enter two integer values, say 45, press the enter key, and it is still waiting. आपने अब दूसरी value enter करनी है, say 70, just 70, ठीक है. So the sum of 45 and 70 is 115. That is what we wanted to print. ये message हम चाहते हैं. ये नहीं कि K और L. The user doesn't know कि what K is and what L is. वो आपकी internal representation है या mechanism है for storing these values. But this is what the message that you wanted to have. Acha. Please type in your first name. Say Muhammad, then last name. Say Ali, then welcome Muhammad Ali. So now those two strings have been concatenated along with a space character in between. Okay? So what did we demonstrate here? We demonstrated two important things. One, okay, the type of data tells you what operations can be performed on that data. Two, the type of data also determine how an operation has to be performed. Okay? If you're adding two numbers, then they would be added arithmetically. But if you're using the same operator with two strings, so then that is not going to be arithmetic addition or addition. That is going to be concatenation. So you as programmer can redefine an operator or operation for a new type of data. आप अगर नया type of you are creating new data types, so you can redefine these operations. ठीक है? This is called operator overloading. This is called operator overloading. And in the course that is being taught, I guess I don't know, maybe you'll study it in the next semester or in the fourth one. So in object-oriented programming and data structures, so there we learn about creating new data types and overloading these operators. So you can do that in that, you can learn about that in that course. Okay. So I hope this is clear to you. Okay. Acha. Now as new programmers, maybe some of you have programmed before or used some other language. I don't know. I'm not sure. But I assume that this is your first time learning programming. So for newcomers, like here in class, when I do it, things are very smooth. But maybe when you start doing it at home, then you get stuck in very stupid kind of errors. Okay? So for that, you need to be very careful. You need to remember that C++ is a case-sensitive language. You need to remember that every statement must be terminated with a semicolon. You need to remember what a string literal is. If you want to print a string as it is, you have to make it as a literal. Okay. So if you write something like इसको हटा दें जी please enter और आप कहें कि ये काम क्यों नहीं कर रहा, ठीक है? So now this is not a string literal. Your compiler thinks that this must be some identifier, this must be some identifier, this must be some identifier, and you have not declared these identifiers. आपने इनको declare नहीं किया हुआ. So this is a problem. ठीक है? So you have to be very careful in these things. Acha. Now let's go back to the slides and see, like, what do we have there. Okay, so like we have done that, we have talked about this. This is how we input strings. This is how we can concatenate strings. Okay. So again, the thing that I mentioned, that here you are using the addition operator with strings. So now it is not arithmetic addition, it is basically concatenation. So you are concatenating two strings. Okay. Similarly, if you use it with the integers, okay, C in first name age. अच्छा, यहाँ पे we are reading two different values. यहाँ पे what are we doing? We are using, यानी कहीं आपको ये confusion ना हो जाए कि if you are using C in and यहाँ पे we are reading two values at the same time in the same line. So यहाँ पे variable की जो types हैं वो same है, they are both integer values. So you can mix the types as well. You can read the name and a numeric value at the same time as well. So in that particular example, we are reading the name and age. कि आपका नाम क्या है और आपकी age क्या है. You enter that. You ask the user to enter that in the same line. So you can do that. ठीक है? It is not necessary or required of you that these types that you're reading in a single in statement, these must be the same. This is not required. So you can mix the types. Okay? Here we are reading the string first name and the integer value age in the same single statement. Okay? And ये तो खैर आपको पता होगा कि you can print these different values. तो वो तो आप print कर सकते हैं. You can print strings and integers all in the same using the same cout statement. Okay. Now let us talk about these two different types that we just mentioned, or the operations that we mentioned about. ठीक है? अच्छा. And let us see like कौन सी चीज़ जब आप strings के साथ यूज़ करें तो उसकी interpretation क्या होगी, और अगर आप integers के साथ उसको यूज़ करें तो उसकी interpretation क्या होगी. ठीक है? So Cin का behavior it is the same. Cin behaves the same way. Cin can read you a word. ठीक है? String में भी read कर सकता है. Cin can read you a number, whether it is an integer value or a real value with a decimal point. So Cin can read you all these values. Cout का behavior भी it is the same for both strings and these values. ठीक है? So it just prints out the values. Now the plus operator, when you use it with variables of type string, it does concatenation. ठीक है? This operator it does concatenation when you use it with a string, and when you use it with integer values or numeric values, it does addition. ठीक है? We have talked about it and demonstrated it. Now हमारे पास we have another form of operator as well, assignment operator as well, जिसमें we assign both the operation and assignment in a single operator. ठीक है? So this is you can call it as a shortcut operator. This is a shortcut operator. तो ये क्या करता है, इसको मैं डेमोन्स्ट्रेट करता हूँ, इन दोनों को मैं डेमोन्स्ट्रेट करता हूँ. अच्छा, दिस इज इंक्रीमेंट ऑपरेटर. इसको हमने डिस्कस किया. अच्छा, ये भी डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. Strings, you cannot use the subtract operator with strings, but you can use the subtract operator with numbers. ठीक है? अच्छा, this operator is called an increment operator. अगर आपने किसी वेरिएबल को इंक्रीमेंट करना है बाय वन, जस्ट बाय वन, सो यू कैन यूज द इंक्रीमेंट ऑपरेटर. ठीक है? अच्छा, you can increment integer values, but you cannot increment strings. Strings को increment करने की तुक नहीं बनती. ठीक है? So again the same statement, the type of variable determines which operations are valid and what are their meanings for that type. So type of variable determine करता है कि कौन से operations can be performed and what is the meaning of those operations. This is what we talked about. Now let's see ये increment operator और दूसरा ये वाला assignment का जो operator है, इसकी इस फॉर्म को देख लेते हैं. This is the assignment operator. कहाँ गया? ठीक है? This is the simple assignment operator. तो ये क्या करता है? Whatever is on the right hand side, वो value copy कर देता है into the variable on the left hand side. ठीक है? This is the simple assignment operator. So whatever is on the right hand side, that value is copied into the variable on the left. ठीक है? Now we have another type of assignment operator. So that is kind of a shortcut operator. So it not only assigns the value on the right, but it also does an operation as well. ठीक है? तो वो मैं आपको बताता हूँ कि वो क्या करते हैं, कैसे करते हैं. First, let us look at the increment. अब यहाँ पे देखें, k is an integer variable. Let me initialize it to 0. ठीक है? In fact, let me initialize both k and l to 0. So k is equal to l is equal to 0. I am reading it as is equal to, but it is not is equal to. It is basically assignment. So we are assigning k the value of l, and we are assigning l the value of 0. तो सबसे पहले क्या होगा, ये असाइनमेंट होगी, 0 वुड बी असाइन टू द वेरिएबल एल, देन एल की जो वैल्यू है दैट वुड बी असाइन टू द वेरिएबल के, सो बोथ विल बी इनिशियलाइज टू 0। ठीक है, अच्छा बात है नहीं प्लीज, लेट अस प्रिंट these variables, ठीक है, so k is equal to, and then we print the value of k. Similarly, L is equal to, and then we print the value L. ठीक है, तो k और L की वैल्यू प्रिंट हो जाएगी, दोनों जीरो हैं, so you'll get 0 0. अगर इनिशियलाइजेशन से पहले if you print these values, what are you going to get? What values are you going to get? No, we use a specific term, we said that garbage values are printed, garbage values, ठीक है. If you do not initialize a variable, so that variable will have some garbage value. By garbage value, you mean like that value, you do not know that value. उसको जो जगह मिली है, उसमें जो भी bits की combinations मौजूद है, that is the garbage value, that is the initial value. जैसे अगर आपको कोई घर allot होता है, for example, और जो allot करने वाला है, they are not that disciplined, तो घर में जो भी गंद कबाड़ पड़ा है वो आपको मिल जाता है as garbage. एंड मे बी बाज सोसाइटीज़ या हाउस उनके रूल्स हों कि जब भी आपने घर खाली करवाना है, सो यू हैव टू क्लीन इट अप एंड बिल्कुल वो जीरो स्टेट पे लेके आना है. ठीक है, सो इन दैट पर्टिकुलर केस यू विल गेट अ वेरी क्लीन हाउस, उसमें कोई चीज़ नहीं होगी, बिल्कुल खाली होगा. ठीक है, सो दैट इज इनिशियलाइजेशन. एट सी प्लस प्लस जो है वो वेरिएबल्स को एट द टाइम ऑफ डिक्लेरेशन खुद नहीं इनिशियलाइज करता, यू हैव टू डू इट. ठीक है, सो इट इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि आप किसी भी वेरिएबल को इनिशियलाइज कर लें बिफोर यू यूज़ इट. These variables have not been initialized yet. This is just a declaration. ठीक है, यहाँ पे हम उनको print कर रहे हैं before initializing them. So we'll get garbage values here. Then we initialize these variables to the value 0. यहाँ पे जब हम उसको print करेंगे फिर हमें k और l की value 0 0 मिलेगी. ठीक है, अच्छा फिर हम क्या करते हैं, we increment k को हम increment करते हैं and we say decrement l. L को हम डेक्रीमेंट करते हैं, एक को मैं इंक्रीमेंट कर रहा हूँ, दूसरे को डेक्रीमेंट कर रहा हूँ. ठीक है, सो K जो होगा वो 0 से 1 हो जाएगा और L जो है वो 0 से -1 हो जाएगा. ठीक है, सो नाउ व्हेन यू प्रिंट दीज वेरिएबल्स, तो आपके पास K इज इक्वल टू 1 और L इज इक्वल टू -1 की वैल्यू प्रिंट होगी. ठीक है, अच्छा जी, इनिशियली K हैज सम गार्बेज वैल्यू 32,764, L हैज सम गार्बेज वैल्यू. ठीक है, देन वी इनिशियलाइज्ड K एंड L, तो उनकी वैल्यू 0 हो गई. फिर हमने K को इंक्रीमेंट किया और L को डेक्रीमेंट किया. सो दिस इज हाउ इंक्रीमेंट एंड डेक्रीमेंट ऑपरेटर्स वर्क. ठीक है, ये उनकी दिस इज व्हाट दे मीन. अच्छा, प्लीज एंटर टू इंटीजर वैल्यूज. बाकी जो प्रोग्राम है वो अच्छा ठीक है. सो यू नो व्हाट इंक्रीमेंट एंड डेक्रीमेंट ऑपरेटर्स आर. अच्छा, increment and decrement operators, if you use them with strings, so that will result in an error. For example, आपने ये strings को read कर लिया है and you're trying to increment the full name. ठीक है, थोड़ा सा लंबा हो जाए, so this will result in an error. ठीक है, no match for operator plus plus string के लिए the operator increment is not defined, so we do not have a definition of the increment operator for strings, so we cannot use this operator for strings. ठीक है, just the way we mentioned here कि अगर आप इसको use करते हैं for इसको यूज करते हैं किस चीज के लिए, स्ट्रिंग को इंक्रीमेंट करने के लिए, तो फिर जो है दैट विल रिजल्ट इन एरर. ठीक है, अच्छा नाउ लेट्स टॉक अबाउट दिस ऑपरेशन. ठीक है, अच्छा, सो दिस इज असाइनमेंट, दिस इज आल्सो असाइनमेंट. This is plain simple assignment operator. Whatever is on the right hand of this assignment operator, that value or expression, uski value, it is copied into whatever variable you have on the left hand side. So you have to make sure कि इस assignment operator के left पे you should have a variable, an identifier, ठीक है? और इसके right पे you can have a constant, you can have an expression जिसमें आप चीज़ों को add कर रहे हैं या ज़रब तकसीम कर रहे हैं, बड़ी complicated किस्म की expression हो सकती है. You can have a function call as well, किसी और function को भी हम call कर सकते हैं. अच्छा, so you have to make sure that. Now we have other versions of the assignment operator. For example, यहाँ पे हमने k को इंक्रीमेंट किया, ठीक है, एंड देन वी से k प्लस इक्वल टू 100, ठीक है. अच्छा, इसका क्या मतलब है? इसका मतलब है कि k शुड बी असाइंड दिस वैल्यू, k की पुरानी वैल्यू प्लस 100, ठीक है. This is shortcut. This is shortcut for this expression. Now some people, like those who are new to programming, they might find this expression confusing. कि इसमें दोनों साइडों पे k है, ये क्या चक्कर है, ठीक है. So this is assignment. हम k की नई वैल्यू मालूम करना चाह रहे हैं by adding 100 to the पुरानी वैल्यू of k, ठीक है. तो ये जो k है ये उसकी करंट वैल्यू है, उसके साथ हम 100 ऐड कर रहे हैं और जो भी इसका फाइनल रिजल्ट है उसको हम असाइन कर रहे हैं टू द वेरिएबल k. तो इस एक्सप्रेशन के बाद k की अब वैल्यू क्या है? k की इनिशियल वैल्यू 0 थी, फिर हमने उसको इंक्रीमेंट किया, इट बिकेम 1, एंड देन वी आर सेइंग दैट k प्लस इक्वल टू 100. तो इसका मतलब है कि k इज इक्वल टू k प्लस 100 या k इज इक्वल टू 1 प्लस 100. सो 101 की वैल्यू वुड बी असाइन टू k. अच्छा, तो यहां जब k प्रिंट होगा तो इट्स वैल्यू वुड बी 101. से यहां जब l प्रिंट होगा तो उसकी वैल्यू -1 होगी. अच्छा, लेट्स डू दिस एज वेल, या इनफैक्ट हाँ चलें यहाँ कर लेते हैं. सो l इज इक्वल टू, हम कहते हैं l प्लस इक्वल टू k. अच्छा, इसका क्या रिजल्ट होगा? व्हाट डज दिस मीन? व्हाट डज दिस एक्सप्रेशन मीन? इट मीन्स l इज इक्वल टू l प्लस k. l इज इक्वल टू l प्लस k. अच्छा, तो इसकी क्या वैल्यू होगी? अगर हम यहां पे लिखें, इसको प्रिंट करें यहां पे, द न्यू वैल्यू ऑफ l इज इक्वल टू एन l, तो क्या वैल्यू प्रिंट होगी? 100. l को हमने डेक्रीमेंट कर दिया था फ्रॉम 0, इट इज -1 राइट नाउ, और उसके साथ हम 101 ऐड कर रहे हैं. सो -1 प्लस 101 इज 100, ठीक है. हाँ जी, द न्यू वैल्यू ऑफ l इज इक्वल टू 100, ठीक है. द न्यू वैल्यू ऑफ l और k जो है वो 101 है. इसकी समझ आई है? अच्छा, नाउ यू कैन यूज दिस ऑपरेटर, ये जो असाइनमेंट है, अच्छा, इस ऑपरेटर की जो ये फॉर्म है, इट कैन बी यूज लाइक विद ऑल द वेरिएबल्स. उससे क्या मुराद है? लाइक वी कैन हैव, फॉर एग्जांपल यहाँ पे देख लेते हैं, वी कैन हैव l माइनस इक्वल टू k. इसकी क्या आउटपुट होगी? ये होगा l इज इक्वल टू l माइनस k. So L is -1 minus K 101, so -102. -102. The new value of L would be -102. ठीक है? अच्छा, we can also use it with multiplication. So this is L is equal to L multiplied by K. अब क्या वैल्यू होगी इसकी? -101. ठीक है, L की पुरानी वैल्यू -1 है और आप उसको मल्टीप्लाई कर रहे हैं विद K विच इज 101. सो -101 वुड बी द आंसर. So the new value of L is -101. ठीक है. अच्छा. Now you can use since like addition operator is defined for strings. Addition जो है वो strings के लिए defined है. या जो addition operator है, it basically is concatenation for strings. So आप strings के लिए इस operator को use कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, strings के लिए आप इस operator को use कर सकते हैं. For example, यहाँ पे f name हमने read कर लिया and then we say f name प्लस इक्वल और यहां पे लिख देते हैं जी खान. ठीक है, क्या होगा? f नेम के साथ ये खान कॉन्कैटिनेट हो जाएगा. ठीक है, या पेंड हो जाएगा. अच्छा, दैट वी कैन वेरीफाई. यहां पे फिर जब f नेम प्रिंट होगा तो चलें इसको वेरीफाई कर लेते हैं. लेट अस बिल्ड एंड रन. ओके, ये इंटीजर की वैल्यूज हैं. ये हमने एंटर कर ली. प्लीज टाइप इन योर फर्स्ट नेम. से फर्स्ट नेम इज खालिद, लास्ट नेम इज से आफरीदी. ठीक है, सो वेलकम खालिद खान आफरीदी. सो खान इज जो हमने अपेंड किया है या कॉन्कैटिनेट किया है तो वो बाय डिफॉल्ट हो गया उसके साथ. ठीक है, सो दिस ऑपरेटर सिंस अब आप ये काम नहीं कर सकते. Since subtraction is not defined for strings, so you cannot use this operator here. Multiplication is not defined for strings, so you cannot do this operation here. Similarly, division is not defined for strings, so इसको भी आप use नहीं कर सकते. ठीक है. Asha, again, so this is basically reinforcing the same point. The type of a variable determines which operations are valid. ठीक है. And similarly, the type of a variable also determines what is the meaning of that operation. उस operation का मतलब क्या है. ठीक है. अच्छा, so I hope like this is abundantly clear. Identifiers, we have talked about it. This is just बिल्कुल चूँकि we have talked that about it in the lab session. This is the theory part of it. So this is the formal material on that thing. So what are identifiers? Identifiers are names. ठीक है. Names of variables, names of functions, names of anything that you create. So that is an identifier. Now, whenever you want to use a name in C++, you have to follow some rules. ठीक है. What are the rules? Number 8, the name must start with a letter. ठीक है. It should contain letters. It can also contain digits, and it can also contain special characters like underscores. ठीक है. हमने डॉलर को भी ट्राई किया था, although यहाँ पे हम कह रहे हैं कि time to market is not maybe valid, but it works. ठीक है. ये जो डॉलर का सिंबल है, it also works. So you can refer to the latest C++ standard or latest information about the compiler that you are using, and then you can verify कि कौन सी चीज़ valid है और कौन सी चीज़ valid नहीं है. ठीक है. But for the purpose of this course, this is ये तो खैर this is not a valid name. ठीक है. 12x because ये क्यों valid नहीं है? It starts with a digit. ठीक है. तो आपका जो कंपाइलर है वो इसको इंटरप्रेट करता है एज अ न्यूमेरिक लिटरल. इट थिंक्स कि ये कोई नंबर है शायद. ठीक है, विच इट इज नॉट. दीज आर वैलिड वेरिएबल नेम्स. x नंबर ऑफ एलिमेंट्स, ये अंडरस्कोर कैरेक्टर है. फोरियर ट्रांसफॉर्म. नाउ योर वेरिएबल और आइडेंटिफायर कैन आल्सो बिगिन विद एन अंडरस्कोर. अंडरस्कोर से स्टार्ट भी हो सकता है, बट वी डू नॉट डू दैट. ठीक है. अंडरस्कोर से स्टार्ट होने वाले जो वेरिएबल्स हैं यूजुअली दीज आर रिजर्व्ड फॉर ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम्स, और यानी ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम का जो कोड है उसमें जो वेरिएबल्स होते हैं दे यूजुअली स्टार्ट विद अंडरस्कोर। तो आप जो कोड लिख रहे होते हैं इफ इट इज़ नॉट फॉर एन ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम और ए पार्ट ऑफ एन ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम, तो उसमें आप फिर यू डू नॉट स्टार्ट योर वेरिएबल्स विद अंडरस्कोर। दिस इज अ वैलिड नेम, ये दिस इज अ वैलिड नेम अंडरस्कोर फू, ठीक है, बट यू डू नॉट यूज इट इन नॉर्मल प्रोग्रामिंग। नॉर्मल प्रोग्रामिंग में आप इस किस्म के नाम यूज करते रहते हैं, ठीक है। नाउ दिस इज अ कन्वेंशन। कन्वेंशनल जो चीज़ें होती हैं वो एक रिवायत होती है जो कि एक फील्ड में चल रही होती है। यू कैन ऑलवेज गो अगेंस्ट दैट कन्वेंशन, बट इट इज़ नॉट रिकमेंडेड कि यू शुड गो अगेंस्ट दैट कन्वेंशन, ठीक है। Users can define names that are taken as keywords. So keywords cannot be used as identifiers. This is also int, if, while, double. These cannot be identified. You cannot have variable by the name of int or by the name of if or while. ठीक है? So ये हम नहीं कर सकते. Again, this information we have already discussed and used it. अच्छा, इसमें अब bottom line क्या है? ये सारी चीजें हैं, ठीक है? An identifier starts with a letter. It contains letters and digits and underscores. Other than underscores, you should not be using any other characters. ठीक है? We saw that it works with dollar. It takes it as a valid identifier, but you should not be using it. ठीक है? For the purpose of this course, consider it as an invalid identifier. Identifier must never start with digits. It must never have a space character. नाम के बीच में space character नहीं हो सकता. ठीक है? So main space line, this is not a valid identifier. दैट्स वाई वी यूज अंडरस्कोर। अगर आपने शो करना हो ना कि ये दो मुख्तलिफ वर्ड्स हैं, तो देर आर टू वेज। वन, आप जो है अंडरस्कोर यूज करें। टू, आप हर जो वर्ड है उसका जो पहला लेटर है उसको कैपिटलाइज करें, ठीक है। फॉर एग्जाम्पल यू कैन से नंबर, फिर कैपिटल ओ एफ, फिर कैपिटल ई एल ई एम एन सी। ऑल्दो ये ज़रा लंबा नाम है, यू शुड नॉट गो फॉर वेरी लॉन्ग नेम्स, ठीक है। इतने बड़े नाम भी ठीक नहीं है। दिस इज़ फाइन, बट you should always be very economical with the number of characters and names. You should always choose meaningful names, चाहे variables के लिए हों चाहे functions के लिए हों. The names should be meaningful. जिस किस्म का data आप उसमें store कर रहे हैं उसी किस्म का नाम होना चाहिए. If you are storing some count quantity, तो आप variable counter या count का नाम दे दें. बंदों का count है तो men underscore count. किसी और चीज़ का काउंट है तो आप उस किस्म का, तो यू कैन हैव नेम्स, मीनिंगफुल नेम्स. एब्रीविएशन एंड अगेन दीज आर रिकमेंडेशंस, ठीक है, दीज आर नॉट बाइंडिंग. यू कैन ऑलवेज हैव नेम्स विच आर एब्रीविएशंस और एक्रोनिम्स, ठीक है, दिस इज फाइन, बट मे बी सम पीपल फाइंड इट कंफ्यूजिंग, ठीक है. बाज केसेस में यू मे नॉट हैव एनी अदर चॉइस, यू हैव टू गो फॉर सच नेम्स. अच्छा, शॉर्ट नेम्स कैन बी मीनिंगफुल. यूजुअली हम जब ये एक्स, आई, जे, के, A, B, we use these type of variables, and we use these type of variables usually in loops. So we'll talk about loops. जब आपने किसी block of code को repeat करना हो, बार बार execute करना हो, तो you use something that we call loops. ठीक है? Loop किसे कहते हैं? दायरे. So दायरा जो है ना उसमें चीजें repeat होती रहती हैं. So a loop basically is a structure which repeats a block of code. So, जब भी आप लूप्स यूज़ करते हैं तो उसमें हम ये x और i और j और k इस किस्म के वेरिएबल्स यूज़ करते हैं. अच्छा, वेरिएबल नेम्स शुड नॉट बी वेरी लॉन्ग, लाइक द नंबर ऑफ एलिमेंट्स एंड रिमेनिंग फ्री स्लॉट्स इन द सिंपल टेबल एटसेट्रा. यू शुड हैव रीजनेबली लॉन्ग नेम्स, ठीक है. मसला क्या होता है लंबे नामों का? यू मेक स्पेलिंग मिस्टेक्स, तो फिर वो इनवैलिड आइडेंटिफायर होगा, ठीक है. नाम जितने छोटे और मीनिंगफुल होंगे उतना आप आसानी से याद रख सकेंगे, उतनी आप गलतियाँ कम करेंगे, तो आपको कंपाइलर एरर्स कम फ्लैग करके देगा. बड़े बड़े नामों में फिर आपकी गलती के चांसेस जो हैं वो बढ़ जाते हैं. अच्छा जी, वी टॉक्ड अबाउट एरिथमेटिक. ये सारे काम हम इनका जिक्र हमने किया हुआ है. लेट अस डू दिस अगेन, ठीक है. We, I guess in one of the lab sessions we asked the user to enter two values, and then we found the sum, the difference, the product, the quotient, the remainder of all those values. यहाँ पे there is another thing that we need to find, and that is the square root of a number. If you need to find the square root of a number, now this is something different, ठीक है. And in order to find the square root of a number, we have to call some function. ये जो function है ना SQRT, This is a function, a built-in function, and in order to use this function, we have to include the CMath library. ठीक है, हमें CMath library को use करना होगा. So let us look at this example, and then that's it. ठीक है? अच्छा. Let us look at this example. Let us close this project. I'm going to create a new project. ठीक है? So let us close this project, then create a new project. Asha, this is again for 18th June, but here we are going to deal with numbers. Okay? Okay, so this is what we get. Acha. Now we are going to ask the user to enter two numbers. Those numbers can be any numbers. ठीक है? बातें नहीं please. बातें नहीं. फिर आपके सर में दर्द हो जाएगा. ठीक है? So we are going to ask the user to enter two numbers, and then we are going to do some operations on those numbers. And for some operations, we are going to use library functions. So we'll import that library, and then we will call some of those functions. अच्छा, if you wonder कि हमारे पास कितनी different types of libraries हैं और हर library में कौन-कौन से functions हैं, so one, you should issue that book, the reference book for this course, और उसमें आपको ये information मिल जाएगी. You'll get information about all the important libraries, standard libraries in C++. ठीक है? और उसमें कौन-कौन से functions available हैं, उन functions को कौन सी inputs चाहिए और वो आपको क्या output calculate करके दे. So you'll get all this information from that book. The other is, like online, there is a very good reference website, C++ reference के नाम से अगर आप search करें, so you will go to the most latest or up to date जो C++ के बारे में libraries हैं और उनकी details हैं. You can get all those details online as well. So if you haven't got the book yet, you should get the book and start reading it, and I'll start assigning you homeworks. ठीक है? अच्छा. So first of all, we need to print out this message. Okay, please enter two numbers. Okay? So we are going to ask the user to enter two numbers. We are going to store those numbers in these two variables, double A, B. So we are going to use double variables. Okay? So the user may enter real value. So we should be able to handle that. अगर आप integer use करते हैं, user real value enter करता है, so you use the fractional part of it. ठीक है? अच्छा, let us read those numbers. Cn, A, and then B. ठीक है? Now that we have the numbers, so let's start with addition subtraction. तो हम कर चुके हैं. ठीक है? That is easy. We'll do that as well again. But let us start with the library functions. So if you want to find out the square root of a number, or if you want to exponentiate a number, find the power of a number, x raised to the power y kind of thing. So then you don't have operators for that. C++ then you don't have operators for that. Other languages they provide. For example, if you're using MATLAB, so MATLAB gives you this hat operator, जो कि exponentiation का operator. So you can say if you need to find out 2 raised to the power 3. So in MATLAB you can do something like this: 2 raised to the power 3. Okay? So it will calculate that way. Here, if you want to do something like that, so you don't have an operator in C++. Similarly in C as well. So you need to use a library function. Okay? So for that we need to include the CMath library. Okay? So we need to say hash include and then CMath. Okay? So the math library, it gives us all these functions, these useful functions. For example, if you want to find out the square root of A, okay? So you can do that. You can say cout the square root of A is. and then find the square root of a. In order to find the square root of a, you need to call a function from the CMath library. The name of that function is sqrt. And when you type sqrt, your IDE, it brings you different versions of this function. तो आपको पता चल जाएगा कि हाँ मैंने नाम सही टाइप किया है कि मसला, ठीक है? अच्छा, so we need to find the square root of a. Okay? So जिस नंबर का स्क्वायर रूट फाइंड आउट करना है उसको आपने देना है एज एन इनपुट टू दिस फंक्शन और आर्गुमेंट टू दिस फंक्शन. सो हम a का स्क्वायर रूट मालूम करना चाहते हैं. सो विद इन दीज पैरेंथेसिस वी प्रोवाइड द वेरिएबल a. हम टाइप करते हैं कि जी a का स्क्वायर रूट मालूम करके दो. सो स्क्वायर रूट फंक्शन विल एग्जीक्यूट और a का स्क्वायर रूट मालूम करके आपको वैल्यूज के रिटर्न कर देगा. ठीक है? Similarly, we want to find out the square root of b. Square root of b is, ठीक है, and then square root of b. अच्छा. Now say for example we want to find out a raised to the power b or b raised to the power a. You can also do that. ठीक है? How can you do that? So let us type this message once again. अच्छा, यहाँ पे हम कहेंगे जी a raised to the power b. ठीक है? और यू कैन यूज द हैड कैरेक्टर, उसको भी आप इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं या पूरी ये स्टेटमेंट लिख सकते हैं. यू कैन से a raised to the power b is, अच्छा, in order to find a raised to the power b or in general x raised to the power y, जो भी हो, we use the power function POW. ठीक है? we use the power function POW. So P और power किसी भी फंक्शन को कॉल करना हो ना, तो you need to know the name of that function and you need to know कि उस फंक्शन को क्या इनपुट आर्गुमेंट चाहिए, उनको क्या इनपुट वैल्यूज मैंने देनी है. ठीक है? So it requires two input values, x and y, base and exponent. So x is the base, y is the exponent. ठीक है? So हम मालूम करना चाहते हैं a raised to the power y. So a would be the base, b would be the exponent. ठीक है? अच्छा, if we need to find out b raised to the power y, b raised to the power a, तो वो भी हम कर सकते हैं. b raised to the power a is, so यहाँ पे फिर b हमारे पास बेस है और a हमारे पास एक्सपोनेंट है. ठीक है? अच्छा जी, so this would basically find out b raised to the power a for us. ठीक है? अच्छा, we have other functions. We have log. अगर आप if you want to find out the log of some number, you can do that. There are two types of log. One is the natural log, log to the base e, and the other is the common log, log to the base 10. So I guess उसका है log 10. So if you need to find out the log of it, so you can do that as well. Say for example, the common log of a is, and that function is log 10. ठीक है? यहाँ पे आपको ये बहुत सारे उसके हेल्प आ गए. ठीक है? log 10. This is logarithm to the base 10. अच्छा, the common log of b ठीक है? So let's test these functions. Similarly, you have functions for sine, cosine, sine के लिए sin, sin, cosine के लिए cos, cos, tan, cotangent, फिर उनके inverse, arc sine, arc cosine, and if you have the sine value, you need to find out the angle in radians. So फिर you can use the inverse function. ठीक है? So you have all these useful functions जिनको जब आपको ज़रूरत पड़ेगी in future, so you can use these functions and you can find these values. ठीक है? मुख्तलिफ mathematical functions. Let us first compile this code. So the code compiles fine, then let us build and run it. Acha, please enter two numbers. So let us enter two numbers. The first number that I want to enter is say 10. The second one is say 100. Okay. The square root of 10 is 3.16. The square root of 100 is 10. Okay. So these are roughly ठीक हैं. 10 raised to the power 100 is ठीक है. अब ये इस नोटेशन में गिवन है. इस नोटेशन को कैसे रीड करना है? दिस इज 1 मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 10 रेज टू द पावर 100 प्लस 100. 1 मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 10 रेज टू द पावर प्लस 100. ठीक है. दैट इज हाउ यू आर गोइंग टू इंटरप्रेट इट. 100 रेज टू द पावर 10 इज 1 मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 10 रेज टू द पावर 20. अच्छा, ये फॉर्मेटिंग भी हम चेंज कर सकते हैं. वी कैन डू समथिंग अबाउट दिस फॉर्मेटिंग एज वेल. वी लर्न अबाउट इट इन सम लेटर क्लास. उसके लिए वी नीड टू यूज अनदर लाइब्रेरी. ठीक है. Or maybe we need to change some settings for cout. The common log of 10 is 10. Log of 10 to the base 10 is 1. 10 की power 1 ले तो 10 आता है. Similarly, the log of 100 to the base 10 is 2. ठीक है. 10 raised to power 2 is 100. So you can verify, you can use all these different functions. मैं सिर्फ यहाँ comments में उनके नाम लिख लेता हूँ. You have the sin function sin. You need to find out the, say, the sine of a. ठीक है. So you need to say sine of a. तो वो आपको a की साइन वैल्यू कैलकुलेट कर देगा. बट a must be in radians. रेडियंस में ना हो तो द साइन फंक्शन एस्यूम्स के इट इज इन रेडियंस. चाहे आपने एंगल डिग्री में दे दिया 90 रेडियंस. ठीक है. तो वो 90 रेडियंस के हिसाब से वैल्यू कैलकुलेट करेगा. सो यू मस्ट बी केयरफुल जब आप इसको यूज करें. सिमिलरली कॉस, टेन, कोटेंजेंट. ठीक है. कोटेंजेंट, हाँ, ये कॉट है या मैं इसमें थोड़ा सा कंफ्यूज हूँ. आइदर इट इज कॉट या कोटेंजेंट. वेरीफाई कर सकते हैं यूँ. यहाँ पे यू कैन से COT नहीं. अच्छा, इन एनी केस यू लुक इट अप. आई मे फॉरगेट इट. लेकिन सिर्फ आपको मैं आई वांट जस्ट to give you some hints कि ये functions हैं. Then if you need to find out the inverse of sine, so arc sine. ठीक है. Arc cosine. ठीक है. Then we have cos hyperbolic, sine hyperbolic functions. तो sine hyperbolic function, cos hyperbolic function, tan hyperbolic function. तो ये सारे मौजूद हैं. ठीक है. You can look up this library and you will come to know about all the math functions available in this library. समझ में आई? अच्छा. Any questions up until now? The other part of it, that is simple. I guess we have demonstrated it. ठीक है. ये multiplication, addition, subtraction, division, modulo operation you should know about it. ठीक है. वो modulo operator जो है, जो remainder मालूम करता है. ठीक है. So that is also very useful operator. So you should know about that and like उसका पता होना चाहिए. बाकी तो खैर plain simple arithmetic है. So you should be able to do this by yourself. इसके अलावा if you have any questions you can ask. जी. Any questions about today's lecture? समझ आ गई है? ये वाला, हाँ, ये दो, इसको नहीं यूज करना चाहिए. मतलब उसने दो न्यू लाइन कैरेक्टर्स इंसर्ट कर दिए. आइदर यूज एंड लाइन, दिस विल इंसर्ट अ न्यू लाइन कैरेक्टर, न्यू लाइन, और यूज दिस वन. तो अगर आपने नोट किया वहाँ फासला ज़रा ज़्यादा था. ये देखें ज़रा, इसको अगर रन करें ना, ये कर्सर बड़ा नीचे पड़ा हुआ है. ठीक है. तो उसकी वजह ये है कि यहाँ पे न्यू लाइन कैरेक्टर भी है, एंड लाइन भी है. तो इन दोनों में से किसी एक को इस्तेमाल करें. इसको हटा देते हैं. ठीक है. अब कर्सर जो है इतना ज़्यादा नीचे नहीं है. ठीक है. वो पहले दो लाइन के फासले पे था. अच्छा. नाउ right up until now, like I'm trying to teach you the language. We are learning C++. We haven't solved any practical problem. Any numbers को add करना, subtract करना, this is not problem solving. But I'm hoping that you are learning these things, because when I give you a problem, then you will need to do all these things. Okay? So once we learn about, in the next lecture, inshallah, we learn about the if statement. If you want to test some condition, हम देखना चाहते हैं कि कोई condition true है या false है, and based upon that we want to make some decision. And once we learn about those loops, so then we'll be able to solve meaningful problems. Okay, I have a meeting. So if you don't have any if you have any questions, you can drop the questions in Google Classroom. I'll try to get back to you. Inshallah, we'll meet next time. ठीक है, जब भी हो.